Students, now we will be discussing the next poetry, that is poem number 5 from your book Beehive only, A Legend of the Northland. This poem is written in a ballad form. What is a ballad form? That we have discussed in our previous video lecture also. That basically means that in the poem we are narrating a small story, and legend is some historical thing. And in this poem, which is written by Forbes Carey, we are discussing about how the poet tells a small story that if a human is too greedy, then what could be the consequences on the day of judgment. It is not necessary that the day of judgment will come. You would be facing the God only when you are dead. It might be when you are living a very beautiful life full of food, shelter, not much luxuries, but basic necessities are fulfilled, and you have too much greed, then the God could make you realize your mistake also. In this poetry, we have discussed a short story of one such greedy woman only, and the poet wants us to learn from it that greediness will lead to a bad end only. So let us begin and see what the poet wants us to understand. The Northland is a cold region. In the beginning of the poem, the poet has told about a place, Northland. Northland is a place in which is very much near to the North Pole. These are the reasons over there is extreme cold, as weather conditions are extremely cold, and snowfall is there. Then the poet has explained about how the people live over there. In the Northland, the people are saying that nights are too long. It is as long as that the people could sleep and wake up again, but still night is on. You all might be familiar with the thing that in the winters what happens, that nights become long and days are shorter. And in this Northland region, nights are so long that basically what happens, that people go to sleep, they wake up and it's still night only. And over there the dress up of the people have been explained. In the dress up they are wearing, small children wear furry coats, and they look like the children of the bear. They have been compared to a furry bear, they appear like them. And then we have told about the animals who used to be found in the Northland. They just use sledges to move on the snow. You all are familiar with it, that on snow cars and all doesn't work. They have been using animals in the form of sledge, and sledge has been attached and then they carry out their works. So this was a brief description about Northland, that it's a very cold region and how do people live over there. Let's begin with the story. One St. Peter stopped at old lady's cottage because he was feeling hungry. So once what happened, St. Peter stopped at old lady's cottage. Who was St. Peter? St. Peter was basically a disciple of Jesus Christ, and this disciple has moved to take a round around the world and see all the miseries that were going through. So the disciple of Jesus Christ, that is St. Peter, he was just traveling, he was fasting, he was having fast, and that particular day he was feeling very much faintish. So what did he decide? That why don't I take a rest? I'll take a little bit of meal and then I'll carry on with my journey. So what did he do? He just stopped at a little woman's cottage house, and over there he just sat and he demanded that please serve me a piece of cake. The little woman was too greedy, and she was having a cake house shop. She was preparing cakes, and there were n number of cakes prepared and being lined up, but the woman's greediness was so much that the moment when St. Peter said that I'm feeling hungry, please serve me with a small piece of cake, the woman was really very much astonished that why would I serve a cake, that too free of cost. Let's see what happens now. When Saint Peter asked for one of the cakes, she tried to make a tiny cake for him. What happened that Saint Peter, disciple of Jesus Christ, he just said that do one thing, you just serve me a cake. You are having so many cakes in your shop, you could give me a small cake. But the woman was so greedy, she said, okay, I'll prepare a cake for you, a new cake for you. And she took a dough and she rolled a cake, and the moment she was going to put in the oven, she realized it's too big. I cannot give a big cake, that too free of cost. She again turned back. She again took a dough. And what did they do? She again rolled it and it was ready to be ovened. But the moment she looked, she thought, no, it's again too big. And now the third time, she took a small dough just with the size of his palm hand, and she made and rolled a cake. It was just slim like a wafer, and then she ovened it, she cooked it, and she served that wafer cake in front of the Saint Peter. Let us see what was the reaction of him. He curses her, saying that she was far too selfish to be a human, to have food, shelter, and fire to keep her warm. Now Saint was really very much disappointed by seeing so much greediness in the woman. He said that you have been provided by everything. Jesus has given you a good life, a human form to live. You have been provided with shelter, with fire that will keep you warm in this cold weather also. So Jesus has given you all things. A human form, you are even not an animal, and still you are such a greedy woman that you cannot offer me a piece of cake. This greediness cannot be there in any human. So Saint says that remember, you will become a bird, you will become a woodpecker. For living, you have to make bores in the tree trunk. You might have seen a woodpecker. What does a woodpecker do? Woodpecker makes a hole in the tree and then shelter is there. Now you will not be a human, you would be an animal. You would be converted into a bird woodpecker. You will have to bore around in the forest in order to make your shelter. And after that also you will not be getting sufficient food to eat, and that would be a life for you. So the moment the Saint Peter cursed the woman, what happened? The woman was converted and transformed into a woodpecker. And all her clothes that she was wearing, it was burnt and the ashes have become into black color. And she just flew away in the sky from the chimney of the house. So this was the curse that was given by the Saint Peter, that she would be transformed into a bird woodpecker. Now what happens? Every schoolboy is said to have seen her in the forest boring into the woods for food. Every schoolboy, that means every boy's young generation. Look what happened. This story was a legend. It's a folk tale that has been narrated by the elder people to the young generation, and they often tell their children that if you have greed in yourself, you would be cursed and you will be converted into an animal, a bird, just like the old lady was converted. So the school boys, when they go to school in the forest, they just see a woodpecker who is burrowing in the tree's trunk in order to make a house. So the basic message that the poet wants to give you is, greediness will lead to nothing except the thing that is you will be landing up into a problem. If God has given you a human form, then you must utilize it. Instead of acting like animals, we should act like good human beings and make the Almighty feel that we are privileged that we have been made humans by the God. If greediness is there, then something like this also could happen with us and we would be cursed by someone. Students, let's move towards the internal questions. Read the following extract and answer the following questions. He came to the door of a cottage. In traveling around the earth, where a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth, that means a fireplace. At whose house did the Saint Peter arrive? Saint Peter arrived at the house of a woman who was baking cakes. So where did the Saint Peter has arrived? He has arrived at the place of an old woman. What did the Saint Peter ask the woman? Saint Peter asked the woman to give him cake as he was hungry, so he demanded a piece of cake. Why was he feeling faintish? He was feeling faintish because he had been fasting all day and was hungry, as Saint Peter has been going around the world. So he was fasting, and because of that his body has become weak and he was feeling faintish, and that was the reason he was hungry and he demanded for a piece of cake. So now let's move towards the questions from your scan data. Students, let us discuss the important questions from your poem number 5, that is The Legend of the Northland. Which country or countries do you think the Northland refers to? So I told you in the poem that the Northland refers to the countries which are near to the North Pole and those countries which have extreme climatic conditions with reference to winters. So the regions which are near the North Pole like Greenland, Russia, Canada, Norway, so these are the regions which have extreme cold. Question number 2. What did Saint Peter ask the old lady for? What was the lady's reaction? So the Saint Peter, who was traveling around the whole earth, he just came and asked that, can you please serve me with one of the cakes, as there were many cakes lying at the place of the old lady. The old lady's reaction was not so good because she was too greedy and she did not want to offer anything to Saint Peter, not even a small piece of cake. How did he punish her? He punished the lady by changing her into the woodpecker that built and gathered scanty food by burrowing in the hard dry wood all day long. So over here we are talking about Saint Peter and the old lady, that how did Saint Peter punish this lady? So he punished by cursing her that she would become a woodpecker, and for the rest of the life she would gather the food in the scanty food from the forest. She would be making the burrows in the houses of the trees and in the woods all day long. So this was some important questions. I hope students you have understood all the 3 poems. Thank you.